Let's talk about Stephen and the Sanhedrin. So the Sanhedrin was made up of two groups that we've all heard a lot about, the Pharisees and the Sadducees. The Sadducees and the Pharisees often were at odds with each other, but when they united on something, they had a lot of power, especially in the greater Sanhedrin court, which was like a supreme court. They had so much power, in fact, that they could enact the death penalty with the permission of Rome. People looked at the Sanhedrin as if they were gods, or at least more than man. The Sanhedrin were also in charge of deciding whether a prophet was a false prophet or not, and we all know how they treated Jesus.
Fascinating.
So let's back up and talk about Stephen then. Acts 6 verse 8. Now Stephen, a man full of God's grace and power, performed great wonders and signs among the people. Opposition arose from the members of the synagogue of freedmen, as it was called, Jews of Cyrene and Alexandria, as well as the provinces of Cilicia and Asia, who began to argue with Stephen. But they could not stand up against the wisdom the Spirit gave him as he spoke. Then they secretly persuaded some men to say, "We have heard Stephen speak blasphemous words against Moses and against God." So they stirred up the people and the elders and the teachers of the law. They seized Stephen and brought him before the Sanhedrin. They produced false witnesses who testified, "This fellow never stopped speaking against this holy place and against the law. For we have heard him say that this Jesus of Nazareth will destroy this place and change the customs Moses handed down to us." All who were sitting in the Sanhedrin looked intently at Stephen, and they saw that his face was the face of an angel. Many Bible scholars believe that the synagogue of freedmen was formed by ex-slaves of Rome who were freed, hence the name freedmen, and at some point converted to Judaism and fashioned themselves some sort of keepers of the law. Something we should know about these keepers of the law, including the Sanhedrin, Pharisees and Sadducees, synagogue of freedmen, all of these Jewish leaders, is that they took pride in that, right? Like, it's a very important thing to be the keepers of the oral tradition of the Mosaic law, the Torah. So they enjoyed that. They enjoyed their lofty positions, the power, the respect, right? They didn't want to set that down. But remember, the Torah even foretold a coming Messiah.
Fascinating.
In the first 5 books of the Bible, there's 6 times that references or alludes to a coming redeemer or a leader. But Jesus is the Messiah. Part of the reason he came was to fulfill the old law that no one had ever done perfectly before, right? That was part of why he came, to fulfill the old law and enact a new covenant. So in order for these people to accept that, they would have to lay down everything that they'd ever earned. Everything that they thought they were was now kind of pointless. They needed to bow down to this new guy. Like, they didn't want to accept that. So Stephen is dragged before the Sanhedrin court, and the Sanhedrin ask him, "Are these allegations of you blaspheming God, blaspheming the law, are they true?" And he doesn't even answer that. Instead, he goes right into history lesson mode. And he points out to them, look, even Moses, the man who wrote the Torah that you hold on to so dearly, was persecuted by the same people who he led out of the desert. The same people that he performed these miraculous things in front of are now rejecting him. He points out that all the prophets since then who have alluded to the coming of Jesus were persecuted by the Jews.
Fascinating.
He points out that even the Messiah himself, once they came, even with all his miraculous signs and wonders, they persecuted, denied, and crucified him. And now Stephen is standing there in front of him, also having performed miraculous signs and wonders, and they don't want to hear it. So at the end of his speech, like, Stephen is justifiably angry, and he just lays into him. Acts 7, verse 51. "You stiff-necked people, your hearts and ears are still uncircumcised. You are just like your ancestors. You always resist the Holy Spirit. Was there ever a prophet your ancestors did not persecute? They even killed those who predicted the coming of the righteous one. And now you have betrayed and murdered him. You who have received the law that was given through angels, but have not obeyed it." So Stephen is like, look, you guys were the people who were given the book by angels that foretells all of this happening. So you should know that this is happening. On top of that, there's miraculous signs and wonders happening that should help you prove this, And still you want to be blind? Like, he's fed up. You would think this would be the Sanhedrin's come to Jesus moment. They dragged him outside and they stoned him to death. Persecuted, martyred, just like the apostles, just like Jesus. just like the prophets. It's so sad to me because this attitude, this narrative is alive and well even inside Christianity. It's rampant, actually. People would rather walk around with their blinders on than admit that, yes, prophets are real. Miracles are real. The Holy Spirit can work within you. You are a powerful child of God that has authority. They would rather have their blinders on than admit that and seek that, because doing so would completely disintegrate their worldview. Don't be a Pharisee. Seek Jesus. Seek the Holy Spirit with everything you have.